Hi there, it's Bruce Wallace from Dundee and Victoria Chess Club in Bonnie, Scotland, and the game we have here is two potential challengers for the World Crown in the early 20th century, and they are, as white, Akiba Rubinstein, the great Polish champion and virtuoso of the endgame, and as black we have Nimzowitsch, who was the author of my system, the father of the hypermodern school, and another potential challenger for the World Crown. So let's get on with the game. Rubinstein opens with d4, and we'll move rapidly through the opening here. Knight's out, b6, g3, c5, bishop g2, bishop b7, pawn takes, c4, g6, b3, bishop g7, bishop b2, castles, knight c6, knight c3, a5, queen d2, and the position here is something of a mongrel system, elements of the Tory attack, the London system and the Coley system, and also elements of the Queen's Indian, so it's a bit of a mongrel here. Now I took this game from a book by Raymond Keane called Nimzowitsch, A Reappraisal, and he has annotated the game. Now the next move is d6 from Nimzowitsch, and then Rubinstein plays knight e1, and Rubinstein's plan is to play the knight c2 to e3 and then land the knight on d5 to have influence on black's position. But Keane in his book says that in this type of position this plan is really far too slow. It's okay to have complex knight maneuvers in very close positions, but there's a lot of dynamic potential in this position for black, so really this plan is too slow. So after this, Nimzowitsch merely develops the queen, then knight c2 continuing with the plan, and Nimzowitsch comes out with a really good move here. He plays knight b4, and it's given an exclamation mark by Keane, and it's putting the question to white: are you going to carry on with your plan, or allow me to take your knight, or are you going to exchange it? For example, if white exchanges, then we have bishop takes bishop, king takes, pawn takes, knight to d5, knight takes, bishop takes bishop, king takes, queen to e6, e4, and then rook a3, and black is better here, the a1 rook being fastened to the a2 pawn here. So that as a combination isn't particularly good. So after knight b4, white ignores this and continues with his plan, and this now allows Nimzowitsch to exchange off the light squared bishop, and king takes bishop. Now here, instead of king takes bishop, Keane suggests that white needs to reassess his position and change his plan, and therefore knight takes g2 is the best move, and in fact according to Schroeder this position is almost equal. However, Rubinstein attempts to continue with this plan to get that knight to d5, and ironically it does reach there eventually, but by then the game is lost. So he takes the bishop with the king, and now Nimzowitsch's attack steadily mounts. Queen b7 check, f3, bishop h6, a pin comes on the e3 knight, and knight c to d1, and this supports the e3 knight and opens a tactic of bishop on b2 takes a knight on f3, and when the pawn takes, the queen takes the hanging pawn. However, Nimzowitsch now comes up with an excellent move, a4. Now this really stops this immediate strategy in its tracks, because if we do now have the continuation bishop takes f6, e takes f6, queen takes pawn, we now have a takes b3, and look at the lines of attack that are opening up for black. This is a strategically won position, so I'm not going to look at all the options, but the rooks are connected, the a pawn is pinned, because if it takes the black b pawn, the rook on a1 drops, the queen is going to come under attack, rooks can come to either e8 and d8, the bishop's very active, and therefore that plan for white at this point really isn't feasible. So instead Rubinstein takes the pawn. Now a lot of players here might have continued with rook takes a4, but this doesn't maintain the tension or increase black's pressure too much. and Nimzowitsch comes out with a brilliant move here now. Can you spot it? It's not obvious, so pause the video. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Nimzowitsch plays rook f to e8, and this maintains the pressure and really cuts down the options for white. However, white, according to Raymond Keane here, walks into the ambush. Bishop takes f6, e takes f, king to f2, protecting the knight to free the queen. And now Nimzowitsch comes up with an equally brilliant move. Again, pause the video if you can see it, if you can't see it, and try and find it. It's f5. Now this is like another piece coming into the attack. The pawn is threatening to go to f4, forcing white to exchange off with the g-pawn, and then the knight is in a horrible pin, because if it moves the queen will drop. So white accepts the challenge and takes the pawn, and now the combination continues. Bishop g7, rook b1, and now bishop d4 comes in, pinning the knight to the king this time, an absolute pin, and threatening knight d3 check, winning the rook on b1, which would be hanging to the discovered attack of the queen. And the next move played by Rubinstein was king g2. Now this just loses a piece, and it looks like Rubinstein has had enough, and the game rapidly concludes with the swapping off of all the pieces except the extra one that Nimzowitsch has. And after a few moves, white resigned. However, some people may ask, after bishop d4, instead of moving the king to g2, dropping a piece, was there a more tenacious defence? Well, apparently yes, which is rook b3. However, this move just shows how brilliant Nimzowicz's conception of the attack was, because we have some following lines thus: rook e6, and the queen has only one square to go to, which is queen f4. Then queen e7, and it's threatening knight c2, hitting the knight a fourth time. King g2, getting out the pin, and now rook to e8, and the knight is hit a fourth time. And one suggestion as a good move here is a3, forcing the knight to move. And now, at last, the knight can come to d5, hitting the queen. The knight has finally reached the d5 square. If we go back, however, another option, knight takes c2, then it's rook takes e2, check, and it just picks up material at will. So that's a losing line. However, after knight c2, knight d5 also loses to an excellent attack. Rook takes e2 check, king h1. Another move would have just lost material, and now apparently white has survived. However, Nimzowitsch pulls out another fantastic move. Can you see it? Pause the video. Rook takes h2 check, king takes h2, and then queen e2 check, and white is either mated or loses bags of material. Shove it in your engines and have a look. A fantastic attacking game, which punished Rubinstein severely for the faulty moves of that night. So from that small advantage, Nimzowitsch built up a killing attack. Perhaps the next game I'll show will be a masterpiece from Rubinstein, but I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you soon.